I'm gonna teach you the right way to spec out your custom rifle. All right, guys, I hope you liked my little attempt at a cinematic intro montage there. My goal for this video is to take you through the process on how I think about speccing out a custom rifle. There are 3 key steps that I always follow so that I end up with a purpose-built rifle for the task that I have at hand. Now, step 1, I always clearly define the purpose. I want to know exactly what my plans are for this rifle so that can guide all my decision making through so I end up with that purpose-built rifle. Step 2, I always pick a bullet and how fast I want it to leave the barrel. That is a key component to help me pick the caliber and every other detail on the rifle. And step 3, I want it to look cool, cosmetics. If I didn't care how it looked, I could just go buy a factory rifle that could probably do the same job. But for me, if I'm gonna carry this thing through the mountains all year and maybe use it once or twice, I want it to look cool when I look at it, and I want it to look cool in photos. So let's jump into the 3 key steps and I'll dive in deeper on how I went through picking out every detail of this rifle build. Step 1, clearly identify the purpose. The plan for this rifle came together a couple years ago. We were more than a handful of miles in, packing out our second buck on a mountain mule deer hunt. We started talking about how we could shave weight out of our systems. We'd already done the ultralighting process on our backpack, our sleep system, our cook system. There wasn't much left to be gained there. But all of my most recent hunting rifles had always ended up being somewhere around 12 pounds. I felt there was an easy 3 pounds that could be shaved there. So starting there, we had a base weight that we were looking to hit at 9 pounds. If we shaved 3 pounds out of our rifle, it would just make pack ins easier, pack outs easier. So there's our clearly defined purpose. A backpack hunting rifle, target weight of 9 pounds, and the last piece of it, we wanted to be able to shoot a mule deer out to 600 yards. So that leads us into step number 2, bullet. And more specifically, which bullet and how fast. This is the most critical aspect of the planning process to me, because knowing which bullet we're gonna shoot and how fast it needs to leave the muzzle helps us select which cartridge we're gonna chamber the rifle in, what barrel length we need, and twist rate to stabilize the bullet. It even helps us know which magazine we're able to use. Now, knowing that this is a lightweight backpack hunting rifle, it's important to me that it's forgiving to shoot. And by that, I just mean that it's light recoiling. But I'm not willing to give up very much ballistically to my normal hunting rifles or my match rifles. So with that in mind, the natural choice is just to go down in caliber. Now, my good buddy Carl Ross has had great luck killing elk with 22 cals, specifically using the Hornady 88 ELDM. But then Sierra announced that they're coming out with an 88 TMK, and that whole line of bullets is known to perform very well terminally. So my plan was to run the 88 TMK, and then I could take the likely BC with a minimum impact velocity at 600 yards of 1800 feet per second, and I could start plugging numbers into my solver to figure out which minimum muzzle velocity I need to achieve that goal. Now, in running the numbers, I saw that 2700 feet per second would probably get me there. But I wanted to be a little more comfortable than that, so I put a goal of 2800 feet per second muzzle velocity in to stay way above the 1800 feet per second minimum impact velocity at 600 yards. And from there, I could start deciding which cartridge and which barrel length I needed. I originally thought about a 223, but that would require way too much barrel length to get up to the speed that I needed. And the easiest way to save weight on a backpack hunting rifle is just to start cutting inches off the barrel. And knowing I wanted an 18 to 20 inch barrel, the natural choice probably would have been a 22 Creedmoor, but I can't just do anything normal. My gun builder Short Action Customs has had great luck with the 47 Lapua based cartridges, and I've always liked them too. I had a 647 back in the day. Well, they have a 2247 reamer that I really like, and I can neck down 647 Peterson brass to make brass for this rifle. So the 2247 got the nod. Now I probably could have got away with an 18-inch barrel, but I wanted to give myself a little more margin for error, so I went with a 20-inch Proof Sendero. Now with that in mind, I was very pleased when I hit the range for the first time, and during my pressure test, I got over 3,200 feet per second. So I'm gonna be very comfortable to stay way above that minimum impact velocity of 1,800 feet per second out at 600 yards. Now you can see how much easier it makes it on you. When you're planning out the specs of a build, when you already know which bullet and how fast it leaves the muzzle to help guide you through the decision making so you're not surprised at the end of the build. Step 3, cosmetics. It might seem silly, but if we're gonna build a custom rifle, you might as well like how it looks. We end up carrying these things around and looking at them a lot more than we shoot them on a hunt, so you might as well be stoked on what it looks like. From the overall color scheme to the barrel choice and even the scope, it's important to have a plan in place on the overall look of the rifle so that when the completed rifle comes together, you're stoked on how it looks. Now that you understand my thought process to how I spec out a custom rifle, let's jump into the details of this build so that you can understand my decision making on why I chose the components that I did. I think a natural place to start is with the stock. I got a lot of questions why I went with the MDT carbon stock. I've had a lot of experience using a Manners LRH or EH1, and then I've ran the McMillan Mountain Tracker. I like all those stocks. They will all work for the goals that I had for this rifle. One thing that I really liked about the MDT was the integrated arc rail. There's also M-lock across the bottom. The thing that I like about that, during non-hunting season, I could just run my normal bipods with ARCA on there and I don't have to have a pick rail on. But when it comes time to hunting season, I always want my bipod on a pick rail. It takes maybe 4 or 5 turns of the clamp on a pick rail for it to actually fall off, where with ARCA, just a quarter turn of the clamp and it could slide right off. So right now I'm running it with the MDT lightweight double pull Skypod with the ARCA, no pick rail on there, but come hunting season, I will get rid of that bipod. I'll get a mountain bipod from MDT as well, and then it's gonna have a piece of pick rail on the front. So then my bipod there's no danger of it coming loose and falling off while I'm on the hunt, but I can clamp onto a tripod anywhere along the length of it. So I really like that integrated ARCA rail. Coming across the back, I do not require an adjustable cheek piece, but I definitely like it. If I have a fixed cheek piece, you really need to set your cheek weld height with your rings. So sometimes it's a guess and check game. When you have an adjustable cheek rest, I really like that. It just makes it easier for me or somebody else to get on the gun and set it up for them. At the back of the stock, I've got an OBI or Old Balls Inc. recoil pad. I forget what he calls it, but I really like to have a 1-inch recoil pad on the back of my stock. Our collarbones and our body can only give way so much under recoil. And I like having a 1-inch, either a Pacmar decelerator pad, or this works really well. Sky designed these to work with all the MDT stocks. Having that little extra cushion really seems to help me with recoil management. The stock recoil pad that the MDTs come with, it's basically just a rubber overmold over plastic. There's not a lot of give there. It works fine if you're shooting a light recoiling caliber like this, but I feel like having that extra little bit of give or play in the recoil pad helps me manage recoil. Now coming back into the central portion of the stock, one cool thing that I really like that they did on a stock, you have a trouble with being able to move the grip as far forward as you would like because you have the rear action screw and the bottom metal that kind of block it. So you'll notice on a lot of stocks, the grip is a little bit further back, but if you look at what they did here on the MDT, there's a cutout in the top of the grip so that they were able to slide the grip forward and not have too far of a stretch to get your finger to the trigger. I thought that was a really good design. Now, one of the coolest things about this stock and the bottom metals from MDT as well, is they decided to put a lock on their mag release for the bottom metal. So when it's in this position, you can't lose your mag. You can push on that. If it gets caught in brush or on your backpack, you're not gonna lose it. So to release your mag, you push that button over and you could drop your mag out. I thought that was a great design idea. I like having the AICS bottom metal with detachable box mag. That's just what I prefer. But being able to lock it on there, I thought that was a really good design idea. Now, on the magazine, since I'm here, this is an Accuracy International AW double stack double feed mag. Now, this might seem silly for a hunting rifle, but I like to keep as many rounds in the gun as I can. If it's a 3 or 5 round mag, that's great, it works fine. But this is my preferred mag. I use these on all my match rifles, and if I could use it on a hunting rifle, I'm gonna use this as well. The beauty of an AW mag, double stack, double feed, they are super easy to load. You just push down. You don't have to drop the follower and slide it in. You can just push in from the top, similar to an AR-15 magazine. And then the best part about it is how slick they feed. They come out of the magazine so smooth when you run the bolt. This is by far my favorite magazine. I also like to shoot rocks a lot when I'm in the field. So having 10 rounds in the gun, I could shoot a few rocks and not have to worry about reloading my mag right away. Now, within the trigger guard, I'm currently running a Trigger Tech Primary. I think it's turned down to 1.5 pounds or whatever the minimum is on it. It's a pretty good trigger. I like it a lot. They're tried and true. They're in lots of guns. Lots of people like them. With me, a custom rifle is kind of always evolving. That's one of those things that'll likely change. My preferred trigger would be a Bix & Andy of some sort, Tac-Sport Pro. I really like to put the Gator shoe grip on. I just prefer the feel of that brake. It's almost a ghost brake. There's no back wall. The Trigger Tech, a lot of people like that. It's a hard wall, breaks like glass, and then it hits the back wall. It does not move very far. That's great if you like it. Again, for me, just the way that I prefer my triggers, the brake, I like that ghost brake, either a Mule or a Bix & Andy. So that'll likely get changed out. But for the time being, it's working really well for me. That kind of leads us into the action. This rifle was specifically built to be a backcountry hunting lightweight rifle. And with that in mind, I went with a Defiance Ti-X. Now, if this was gonna be a crossover rifle for NRL hunter and for hunting, I likely wouldn't do a titanium action. I feel like they just run slicker with the steel actions, like an Anti-X or something like that if it was gonna be a crossover, but you just can't argue with the weight savings out of a titanium. This action, the titanium action body is DLC coated, and then the bolt body is black nitrided. Between those two surfaces, it is extremely slick for a titanium action. It's probably the best running titanium that I've ran. I'll give you guys a little tip with a titanium action body. After you've shot and then you raise the bolt, you have to cock the firing pin, but then also there's a lot of pressure against the interface between the lugs of the action, the lugs of the bolt. On a titanium action body, one thing that I do, I take a little bit of gun grease mixed with a little bit of gray anti-seize, a very small amount, but I mix those together and I put them on the back of the lugs. You do not want very much because that will start traveling. It can work its way back into the trigger of the magazine, but just a little bit on the back of the lugs, in my experience, it really helps with the titanium action run very smoothly. The other thing I like about a Ti-X is it has integrated pick rails on there. It's just one failure point that I'm potentially eliminating, but not by not having to bolt on a pick rail on top of it. On the front of the action, I've got a Proof 20-inch Sendero 22 cal 1-7 twist. I went with two things. 20-inch length, I probably could have got by with an 18-inch especially after seeing how much velocity I'm getting out of this 22-47 round. But I have a hard time leaving velocity on the table. And I know I could have saved a little bit more weight, but I went with a 20-inch to make sure I was gonna be able to get to the muzzle velocity that I was after. The other thing, I went with a 1-7 twist. Running the heavy bullets, I probably could have got by with a 1-8, especially at high elevation, but I preferred not the chance. I went with a 1-7 twist to make sure I stabilized those bullets. And then in that configuration, Proof only had a Sendero profile. They don't make a Sendero light in the 20-inch 1-7 twist, 22 cal. So this was actually, I think it looks really good on the gun. Probably could have just saved a couple ounces there. Again, thinking back to the plan for this build, it was not meant to be ultra light. It was meant to be lightweight. I was looking for a 9 pounds or so. So I'm like pretty close there. We'll talk about weight later. But yeah, it got me pretty close. And again, the gun looks really good, which is one of the factors of my planning out a build. Now out front, I'm running a Thunder Beast Dominus right now. I like the shorter length of it, but the diameter, it has a lot of volume there. So this gun is extremely quiet and it's got great recoil reduction. And I think that can works really good for this 2247. I'm super stoked on how well that's working. Up top, I've got the legendary Night Force Attacker 4-16 by 42. It's got a Mil XT reticle, it's first focal plane. Now, for my preferred hunt style, there's a couple things about this scope. First focal plane's very important to me. I want my wind calls to be accurate at all magnifications. I don't want to have to worry about having it on a specific magnification. The reticle may be fairly small at low power, but the beauty of this scope, when you get up to a higher magnification range, like their 7-35, you have to start out with a thinner reticle. The actual line thickness needs to be thinner, because when you go up to 35 power, then it might be way too thick. Well, on a lower magnification range of a scope, they could start out with a little bit thicker because it's only going up to 16 power. And I feel like the reticle line thickness at this is extremely usable at lower magnifications. I could shoot a whole match on 8 power with this if I wanted to, and I'm able to easily distinguish all the hash marks on my wind calls. Another thing about this scope, my style, like I want to find an animal, I want to stalk in, and I want to shoot it without it knowing I'm there. I'm not big on walking through timber. I'm not big on just if I bust something out of the brush and shooting, I'm likely not going to shoot it, to be honest. That's not the experience I'm after. I enjoy the stalk. I enjoy finding an animal and having more time to interact with it, observe it before I shoot it. So again, this works really well with the first focal plane. I love the Mil XT or Mil C reticle. They work really well for my brain with the wind hash marks on it. And then this particular scope is tried and true. It holds 0, it tracks reliably, it returns to 0. This is a bomber scope. It's well known in the industry, so I'm super stoked to have this on there. There's a possibility that I drop to maybe an NX6 or NX8 to try and save some weight on this gun. The total weight of the rifle without the bipod right now is 9 pounds, 5 ounces. I was looking for 9 pounds, and I could easily pick that up just here in the scope. And I'm pretty intrigued by the new Night Force NX6. So there's a possibility of this change. Again, this is always evolving a little bit. For the time being, I'm pretty stoked with the 4-16 42. This thing will stay in my safe forever on one gun or another. Holding it on the action, I'm running the American Rifle Co. rings, the Embrace rings. I've had great luck with these rings. I lap everything. This is one thing I would recommend you do. We've got a bunch of different manufacturers here. There's manufacturing tolerance. This is not throwing anybody under the bus. This is just a check. And if you lap your rings, you're gonna find out whether or not that there's a problem. If you don't lap them, you're just guessing. You probably won't have a problem because these are all great manufacturers, but every once in a while, manufacturing tolerance, especially when you stack them across different manufacturers, there's a possibility you could have a problem. So I always recommend lapping your rings. Again, these American Rifle Co. rings are great when you go and tighten them down. It doesn't change level like the top cap 4-screw rings. It just stays in place as you tighten that cross bolt. And I've been really happy with those. Maybe a little bit heavy. I could probably save a little bit weight there if I need to. For the time being, I'm going to run those. And then I have a Flatline Ops bubble level on here. I love this Halo X bubble level. I always put it ahead of my turret. One thing that's important for you guys to think about is where your eye is naturally focused when you're looking through the scope. For me, if I put the bubble level back in this area, I have to change my focus to see it. But when I have it ahead of the turret, and I could probably get by with it out here, but right here works perfect because I could see it over the parallax knob. When I'm looking through my scope with both eyes open, I am just aware, it's almost like a heads-up display where that bubble level is just within my vision, and I don't have to change my focus. My eyes are focused in the scope, and I'm just able to see the bubble level. So I really like putting it just ahead of the turret there. It works well for me. Now, another thing I want to address with you guys on pick rail mounted scopes. There is actually play that is possible that if you bump your scope, the clamps can move on the pick rail back and forth. The way when you tighten down on a pick rail, it's actually pulling up on the mating surface underneath. And it's possible that if it gets bumped, it will stay offset. Now, something I recommend on pick rails, if you're using pick rail mounts, is to lubricate or use gun grease on all those mating surfaces. The goal is to reduce friction so that if it does get bumped, it will slide back to center, wherever center is, wherever it's neutral. So on the underside and top side, all the mating surfaces of the mounts, I always put a little bit of grease just to reduce that friction in case it gets bumped. Again, I think people have in the past blamed their scope when it was really just the pick rail got bumped and moved off center and maybe walked back, and so they were seeing zero shift. But I typically do not see zero shift when I've lapped my rings and then I lubricate the interface between the mount and the pick rail. All right, guys, now you know how I go about speccing out a new custom rifle. I obviously think looks are important, but make sure that doesn't dictate all the decisions. Start with defining the purpose, then pick a bullet at what speed you want to launch it, and then think about the looks. How do you guys think I did on this build? What would you do different? Leave me a comment down below on what you like or don't like about this build, and let me know what else you want to see next. Thanks, guys.